Welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. Your host, Tracy Hayes. Best of the best. My guest today is a top producer. Her 21-year career has given her a wealth of knowledge, so listen up and take notes. She lived through the collapse of 2008 and 9. She has a story that I am sure many agents are anxious to hear, as it will be full of golden nuggets. She was number 12 in the entire state of Florida in commission payouts with RE/MAX in 2021. Up from number 18 just in 2020. So continued success, a Diamond Club status achiever. I'm sure she'll explain to us what that is. Let's welcome the February edition of the Jax Real Producers Magazine Focus Story from RE/MAX specialist in Ponte Vedra, selling with style, Jennifer White, to the show.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jennifer. Congratulations on your awards. I know you updated me this morning with the recent news, which I'm sure gave a little smile on where you're ranking. You were looking at some of the, went through and looked at the list because you sent me the whole list, like the top 20, I think it was. And I was looking through there and I wanted to look at where some of those other people were. You know, obviously it was Marco Island.
Yes.
Was in there. Sarasota is in there. There was a few from some smaller areas too, though, that made that top 20, which was kind of interesting. But congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, as always, I like to kick off the show. Tell us what the Diamond Club status is. Do you get a diamond for that, or is that?
Okay, I'm not exactly sure. So we haven't had our actual award ceremony yet, but it's a tier. It's based on commissions earned. Right. So I wanted to make Titan Club, and I surpassed Titan and went right on to Diamond. So
excellent.
that was
excellent. Now is that, because you sent me that list too, and as long as that's still looking at Florida, is that looking nationally actually?
That is, you know what? That's also a good question. I'm not sure. I think it's just nationally, because the ranking, the top 12 was for commission earned in Florida in general. The other one is, it's a tier. So there's under 100, there's 100 to 250, there's I think 250 to 499, 500 to 750, 750 to $1 million plus. Right. And so it's tiered that way. So I think that's a national RE/MAX ranking.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. So, as I was putting the notes together, and obviously as much background, you're going to brush up your LinkedIn. Couldn't find much there. Sorry. So I'm going to find out a lot about you. But for those listening to you, if you're a real estate agent or anyone in business right now, you have someone who has reached, the top levels. Less than 1% of the real estate agents that are out there consistently. And you're doing it year in and year out. You've been in the business a while. You're not a 3-year wonder. I do have a lot of those on the show. There's a lot of great people who got started because they've listening to people like you with coaching or just seeing what you're doing. So we're going to dig in and learn a little bit about what you're doing. So let's start off a little bit. Where are you from?
Originally from Atlanta, Georgia. Born and raised there until 86. When my dad got transferred, I was 13. I'm giving away my age there. To actually Jacksonville, Florida. So he was with the railroad with CSX.
Oh, okay.
Yep. We came here briefly. We weren't here more than 2 months before they said, pack your bags. CSX headquarters moving to Baltimore, Maryland. So that was tough. I have 4 brothers. We're a family of 7. So I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So we moved right on up to Baltimore and stayed there forever. And as you probably read, unfortunately, my mom had terminal cancer, diagnosed at 15. So after high school, I wanted to head back south and went back to Tennessee.
So you finished growing up in Tennessee. Well, did you go to school? Go right on to give us your whole bio there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I in
a nutshell.
Yeah. Well, so how I ended up in Tennessee. Yeah. I was very, very social in high school. I might as well have gone for social beings, instead of school. And one of our older friends, she wanted to go to East Tennessee State University.
Okay,
they have
I've been there.
Dome.
Yeah.
So my friend and I were like, oh, that's cool. So I actually applied there and to University of Georgia, but I applied to Georgia a little bit too late. So I didn't get in, probably because of my grades, not late application. And ended up at East Tennessee. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah. Yes. Great town, great school, had a blast. But, every time I would come home, my mom was getting sicker and sicker. Right. And after my sophomore year, I came home for Christmas break, and it was just, she could barely get out of bed. So I was like, all right, this is tough. And I had 4 brothers. So the boys weren't really helping. My father traveled a lot. and I made the decision to come home and
stay.
transfer to University of Maryland.
Okay.
So I went from like a medium-sized university, you know, where I did the Greek system. I was a Kappa Delta
Right.
to University of Maryland, which was ginormous.
Right.
Only 30 minutes from my house, but I still lived on campus. I moved into the sorority house, but it was just hard. I mean, my mom passed that summer, and I just didn't feel good. I wasn't right. And like so many people knew our family because we were a big family. Then my mom volunteered, my dad volunteered.
And 4 brothers, I imagine, playing sports or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was a freshman in high school, I had a senior brother who was on the football team and 2 sophomore brothers that were lacrosse football. So it's like I went into high school knowing everybody there.
Right.
But yeah, so it was hard. Everyone knew our family. And every time I was trying to have a good day, someone was like, I'm so sorry about your mom. And
yeah,
it was just, I was sitting in physics and I would just start crying. I'm like, I'm going home. And so
let me ask you something, because this is empathy is something that people say I lack, and I don't disagree with it, but I think about just that everyone in the world is saying that to you about your mom, that you really are looking for normalcy again, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, it is nice to show that you're thinking about it, but I'm a step ahead of that, and if I want to call it that, a step ahead. I'm more thinking about you as a person, and you know that, and the gesture is nice, but it does put it right back in your face again.
It does.
And yeah.
And even if, you know, not to get into my Greek life, but even if you were trying to have fun and you're at fraternity row at University of Maryland, excuse me, someone would come up and, oh, I'm so sorry about your mom. How's this going? How's that going? And it just it was tough.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially
times.
That close. You know, now it's probably a little easier, but
right.
yeah.
It was too soon. So I would call my dad and be like, hey, Dad, you know, I'm sorry. I've been, you know, having a drink or two. Can you come pick me up?
Yeah.
And then I would spend the rest of the weekend at home.
Right.
So eventually I just said, okay, that's tough. I was there a year and a half. I just didn't feel right. And I was dating one of my brother's roommates at the time from VMI, Virginia Military Institute.
That's too bad.
Yeah, exactly, right?
You know, I graduated from the Citadel.
Oh, no, I did not.
Yes.
Okay, well, good to know. Yeah, so I had a VMI brother, and, you know, boy, did we have a lot of fun there. Had all their hops and stuff.
Right.
But he got a job in Cary, North Carolina, and I said, you know, I'm moving. And my dad was very worried I wasn't going to finish school. And I was like, that is not even an option. I'm going to school. I just need to figure out whether I want to go to, it was Meredith College or NC State or maybe Carolina.
Right.
And again, my younger brother was getting a full ride for lacrosse at Carolina. So I thought, well, I'm going to go be close to him.
Right.
Ended up at Meredith College and was there for 2 years. I loved it. I mean, it was a small school.
Another small school. Yeah.
Very small. I mean, I think there were, I don't even know, maybe 2,500 students, but you had to go to class. You know, your teachers, you had their cell phone numbers. It was so different from University of Maryland where you have 500 people and you were a wait list. You were number 14 on a wait list of 500 people.
I think that, you know, it's funny you led this, and obviously it's not even in my notes or anything, but for those out there, and I know a lot of our co-real estate, anyone listening to the podcast, you're going, your kids are getting of age to go to college and so forth. Mm-hmm. I obviously went to Citadel. You mentioned VMI, 2 small schools. Mm-hmm. There's only 2,500 cadets. Yeah. Now, there's, you know, some VMI is roughly the same size. Yes. Meredith is probably just a few thousand people. And a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to work a spring football game at Davidson up in North Carolina. What a beautiful, small little campus. Yes. Oh, my goodness.
Beautiful.
And I know everyone wants to go to University of Florida and Florida State, but let me tell you what, you're missing out on the small school.
I thrived at a small school. I mean, I absolutely loved East Tennessee State. Mm-hmm. I can't have the same feeling about University of Maryland, even though I love it. It's a fabulous campus, but I was just in a hard time in my life. Right. So, but Meredith, you were part of the family, and my grades changed dramatically. I went from like a BC student, to if I wasn't on the honor roll or making straight A's, I was upset. Right. And if I went home and couldn't figure out
because the classes, if you had 30 students in your class, that was a big class.
It was a big class.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you couldn't get past the corp finance question or accounting 3, I would actually call my teacher because it was, you know,
and a lot of them lived right on campus. You could half of them you could walk over and meet them at the library in the evening or whatever.
Yeah, it was really different. I learned more, I said, in that 2 years than I learned in all 5 years because I changed my major and transferred, so I had to repeat. Because also Meredith, you had to take 2 years of religion and British major authors versus American major authors. So I had to backtrack a little bit.
Whoa, we don't get down to that one.
Yeah.
So you graduate from college. What are you doing?
Living in Raleigh. And then I'm starting to follow my family again. My father got transferred back to Jacksonville after our mom died.
Okay.
So he was here with CSX, and I thought, I'll move closer there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as soon as I made those plans, he got recruited to go work for Canadian National in Montreal. And I thought, damn. Okay. So I came down here anyway. Was living here about 2 years, and this was 97. Living in San Marco, loved it. But I thought, my brothers were living in bigger cities, and, I'm really competitive with my brothers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm going to move. So moved to Chicago because one of my older brothers was there, and also my dad. Mm-hmm. Canadian National Railroad had a U.S. headquarters there. So I would see them all the time. I loved it. It was fun. But at this point, I was married. It was my first marriage, and my husband was a North Carolina boy. He was not digging the city life, and we lived right in the middle of it.
Oh,
and
man.
So
yeah.
I loved it. And my brother and I had a ball, and it was great seeing my dad all the time. And I think I told you briefly before we started, I was doing creative stuff. I was working for a catalog publishing company, which was my background, marketing and advertising. And I was doing Second City Improv through their little class, and it was so fun. But it was just tough because, my spouse didn't like it. So I was like, okay, well, if you get a job making X, doing X with a move package, I'll consider it. Didn't think it would happen. Sure enough, he did. I was like, so, I protested a little bit. I stayed behind in Chicago. And my brother's like, great, live with me. I'm like, okay, twist my arm. So we had a great time, and my company didn't want me to leave. I was doing, great. I had the entire East Coast and Midwest territory.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I had a great job. Loved it. And so I finally said, okay, it's time for me to go home, and moved here. It was the Saturday before 9/11 happened. So that was definitely a difficult time. I mean, I remember I only had one car because we shared a car living in the city. Dropped my husband off at work, my then husband, and went to my cousin's to work on my resume to start looking for a job. Right. And that morning I was there on her, using her computer, and the planes hit the towers. And it was just like,
most of us can tell where we were at 9 o'clock that
morning.
Was
terrible because, you didn't know, it felt like the world was falling apart. Mm-hmm. And so not a really good time to find a job either.
Right.
So I was just kind of doing whatever, putting my feelers out. And it was tough because nobody wanted to really work with a catalog publishing company from Chicago. They heard the name Chicago Catalog Group and thought it was too expensive. So I told my company, I was like, I'm not going to be able to work remote. I'm going to have to, resign and start over. So a neighbor was doing part-time work for a local developer who, of course, I had no idea who he was. I'm not from here, didn't live here.
Right.
And it turned out to be Fletcher Land Corporation and Paul Fletcher, and they were working on Palencia, and I didn't know it. So she's like, well, you have a marketing background. Why don't you go help? I was like, okay, that sounds good. I'll do part-time just until, I find a full-time job. And I was doing all kinds of stuff, stuffing envelopes. I remember seeing the site map for Palencia and going to some of the meetings with the Heinz Group. They would all come into Fletcher Land Group for meetings. And I started correcting Paul's letters. And his assistant kept saying, well, Paul went to Yale. I'm like, yeah, I heard that, but his letters are grammatically incorrect. So I'm just going to fix it a little bit. And
I love it.
She's like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And I was like, oh, okay. So, that happened a few times before she leaned over my desk and was like, please stop doing that. I'm like, okay. And then one day Paul came in and he leaned over my desk and he said, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm just kind of working on your letters. He said, yeah, I've noticed you're changing them. Well, yeah, just a few. He's like, well, I went to Yale. I keep hearing that, I said, but. And he said, well, what do you do? And I said, what do you mean what I do? I said, this is not what you do for a living, because I was basically doing admin for him, just helping part-time. And I said, well, I was in publishing and sales and advertising is my background. And he said, bring me your resume. So, of course, I was like, okay. Didn't bring him my resume. The next day, his assistant said, Jennifer, where's your resume? Like, I don't really have it finished. It was, I'll work on it. She's like, okay. Next day, where's your resume? Finally, she said, honey, I'm going to give you a little tip. When Paul Fletcher asks you to bring him your resume, you bring him your resume. And I thought, I don't know who this Paul Fletcher is, but I'm going to bring my resume.
I love it.
Brought my resume the next day.
Oh, man.
Next thing I know, I was getting calls from all these people that owned, like a PGA Tour position, a developer down at Serenata Beach at Ocean Grand, which Paul was, partnered with. And I thought, oh, okay. So I started, going to meet with these clients or these prospects. And Wally Devlin, who was partnered with Paul at Ocean Grand, they hired me on the spot. And I said, well, I don't have a real estate license. And they said, well, you're going to work up front until you go get your license, and then we'll open a spot for you. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, okay. So I registered for the 7-day crash course, 8-day state class test, 9-day state test, not knowing what I was up against. I thought I did pretty well. I was like, this can't be too hard. I was miserable. Right. I mean, it was so much information. It was information overload, and kind of a perfectionist. So I wanted to do well, and went that whole week. I was stressed out, not sleeping. The night before the class test, I did the end of the book test. And it said if you score like an 80 or above, you're fine. I got a 67. I went to bed and burst into tears. I'm going to fail this test. And so I get up, drive over to Orange Park. Somehow, some way, I got a 97. And Florida Real Estate Institute said, you did great. Go home, sleep, get some rest, take the test the next day. And I thought, I don't know how I did that. I literally failed it the night before.
Right.
Anyway, I got up the next morning, took my state test, passed it first time, thank God, and got a job. So the rest was history.
It is so, where doors open. And what was so funny about it is this Paul asked for your resume. And I mean, it's like...
Must be such a brat.
And I don't know if you're a woman of faith or not. I didn't get that deep into your thing. And obviously you don't broadcast a lot on the social media. So, but somebody was telling Paul to keep knocking on the door for you, or hold the door open. Let's say that. Just hold the door open, because she needs to get through it and hold it open long enough. And he did whatever those 3 days or whatever it was. And amazing. And obviously the connections he had just by endorsing you, they were already hiring you. Obviously your resume was impressive, but just by him saying, hey, you need to talk to her, already endorsed you as a person.
I think he was impressed that I was working this admin position it was like a couple dollars. I don't even know what it was. I didn't care. I didn't, that wasn't the point. It was to get out of my house and do something.
Right.
And when he found out I actually had a background and had a very successful career in the city before, and, he was like, I'm impressed you're doing this. So here, bring me your resume. We'll find you something. Because it was hard after 9/11. Nobody was hiring.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I got a post this morning on one of the Citadel alumni page about this. Well, he's, let's see. He was born a couple of years before I graduated from college. So that's what. But he's 30 something, young 30. And he was like, hey, I've been looking for 3 months. And he actually posted his resume on the page for all the other alumni to look at. And, he was a veteran. He served for 5 or 6 years, and he's got security background. He's some cyber degree. And I'm like, hold on. Something is missing here. Why is it not happening? And you said something that I think is so valuable here. You just did something to get out of the house. And sometimes it is just taking that job, and even though you were far more qualified for it, you did it. And what did you do? You were correcting the CEO's grammar mistakes.
Such a brat.
Yale, Harvard, he was obviously not grammatically correct. And I don't know, did he ever say anything about the grammar? Because I will bet if he's like me, he appreciated the fact that you made him even look better.
He did. And I have to tell you, looking back, I thought I really, really could have shot myself in the foot on that one. Mm-hmm. Because I had no idea that his family was responsible for, bringing the tour from Chicago, when they were headquartered in Chicago, to Ponte Vedra Beach in the 70s. He sold them the land to make his developments more valuable for $1. Now that $1 used to hang in his office, and now it's at the clubhouse at TPC. But that $1 was hanging on the wall in his office forever. And I really could have ruined that opportunity for sure. But I made the most of it.
Well, it probably actually was better you didn't know.
Yeah. I had no idea.
Because you would have then started to think about it.
Yeah.
And been like, ooh, I can't say that to him. Oh, I can't talk. I don't want to be in the office. People put too much thought in it. You came in and you were you, and you sat down there, and it's kind of like, I don't know. There's a lot of things that we learned from dating and so forth. Guys, if we ignore the ladies, right? The more they want to figure out what's going on. You were being you, and the fact that you didn't have this like, oh my God, here's this very important person or very influential person, and you're bowing down to him. The fact that you probably had conversations like you would with anybody else. I had
no idea.
He actually appreciated that.
I think he did. And, and his family was in, and his brother was still working there at the time. But, Paul actually became my biggest cheerleader. So for me, I once I understood the opportunity I was given, I was like, game on. I'm not going to mess this up.
Right.
And I was very fortunate. I was on site in a difficult time. Now, keep in mind, condos were not popular back. I mean, this is 2001. And it was South Ponte Vedra. We were having a really tough time selling those because it wasn't St. Augustine, but it certainly wasn't Ponte Vedra Beach. And that's where most of their clientele they were trying to pull from.
Right.
And we were also selling, at the time, what they thought was kind of a box. I mean, these people were all coming out of custom homes. They were all coming from, Deerwood Country Club, Marsh Landing Country Club, Sawgrass, Queens Harbor.
They're marketing to an older clientele. It's kind of the downsizing.
Downsizing.
We'll take care of everything.
That's right.
Atmosphere.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Condo, maintenance-free living. Well, we had to overcome a lot of hurdles because of the location. Number one, the Serenata Beach Club was new. So it didn't have the allure that Sawgrass Beach Club did. The lodge, the Inn Club. We were way down there. And,
right.
That you lost cell service driving through Guana. It was terrible. We didn't have a Publix yet. We kept we're promising that Publix, but there was nothing. We had a gate station. It was a gate station back then.
Right.
So if you didn't bring your lunch, you were basically eating a hot dog from the gate station or something, whatever you could find there. But so we had to make the most of that because these people were coming from custom homes and they're, like, oh, I don't want a 1-car garage. I'm coming from a 3 or 4-car garage. And, I don't want my place to look like everybody else's. They were used to their custom homes. And
right.
We were selling 3 floor plans. So it was interesting. It was a lot of fun.
How do you relate that a little bit? And I wonder if there is a relationship. Maybe there isn't. But we're like right now, we've got this influx of people coming because I think a good source of it was because of COVID, from the Chicago to the New Yorks and all in between. They've lived in their homes that are probably, if they weren't, most of them weren't the original owners. They're older homes because there's older communities, but they're custom homes.
They are.
And now they're coming here, and we're putting them in, for the most part, these, the Nocatee, the Beach Walk, Beacon Lakes, these tract homes. How do you, when you're working with a client like that, if you could share with the listeners, some of the things that you did to get those people from their custom homes into these little condos?
Well, I learned to keep my mouth shut and listen first because I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
I just became an expert on my product. To me, when you're in sales, whether it was advertising, publishing, or real estate, whatever you need to be an expert. Have all your tools in your toolbox. And so I went to all the design meetings. Like, keep in mind, we were selling out of a trailer. That was our sales office. There were no buildings. There was dirt. So give you an idea, how many units did you think you sold prior to them even starting to pour the foundation? Oh, we sold, I'm trying to remember how many buildings were in that first phase. I think we did 4 or 6 buildings, and we had to be, I think it was 70 or 75% sold.
Wow.
to break ground.
Oh my goodness.
So we were hustling. Yeah. We were definitely hustling. It was a strange economy with 9/11 happening. It was South Ponte Vedra. It was condos, and they just weren't popular back then. So we had to basically show people how they could customize or how easy, lock and leave was. It was definitely painting a picture of that lifestyle. It's like, hey, we're going to build an underground tunnel. Let me take you to the Serenata. Let me walk you around. Let me show you what your lifestyle is going to be like.
Right.
And that's what we did.
Is that where you got that slogan that you said it across at least on your Facebook, some of your Facebook posts? Is it selling with style? I think it's
selling lifestyles.
Selling lifestyles. Yeah.
Yeah, because so I started Ocean Grand at Serenata Beach, and again, it was lifestyle selling. Like, let me show you the club. Let me show you what your life can look like. Well, then WCI, based out of Naples, came calling, and at first, I did unfortunately the same thing I did to Paul. I started blowing them off because I thought, who wants to live in Palm Coast? Sorry.
Right.
I take that. Trust me, I eat those words. But I just didn't want to go down there. I thought that's too far. And finally, one of their executives said, you were highly recommended. Please come at least see what we have. And I went down there, and it was beautiful. I mean, absolutely beautiful. We had 8, 9 oceanfront tower sites. We had this site across the ocean that was going to be what we called carriage homes, 3-story homes with 2-car garages, golf views, lake views, very pretty. So it ended up down there, even though I fought that. WCI based out of Naples was very formal, and I'm not a very formal person. I mean, their agents were all wearing Rolexes and St. John's knit suits and high heels, and I thought, well, I'm not wearing that. And so I told the guy when I was interviewing, I said, I'm pretty casual, and I'm kind of gypsy. I need to be comfortable to sell.
Gotta be you.
I gotta be me.
And how important is it? This is just, I mean, not to interrupt your story too much, but since you're on this, and a lot of things, podcasts and so forth that I listen to, and more of these successful people is basically you've got to be you.
Gotta be yourself.
You've got to be you. I know there's a lot of guys in my business. I was just thinking about this morning because of the event this evening. I was trying to, what do I want to wear? But I also want to be comfortable. I'm a bigger guy. I put tie on.
Yeah.
I don't want to. We're going to set up for the podcast there, and get hot. And luckily tonight it's supposed to not even be 80 degrees, so it should be nice. But how important is that in your presentation? In Naples, what's amazing thing I love about Naples is, the Northerners will go down there and they want to wear ties. It's like, dude, you don't wear ties here. I know.
It was so casual. And just to backtrack to Ocean Grand, same. I mean, we dressed up, but it was a construction site. So, we weren't really supposed to be going up in the buildings. They were only 3 stories at the time. But when the developer wasn't there and on weekends, you better bet your butt we were up in those and we were climbing ladders and showing this is what your view could look like. I mean, we had to. That's how we, painted the picture. And to go back to 2 points.
Because you didn't have the video going on and everything else, or you could just,
Like, this was 2001. We had a topo table. Like, I don't even think they do. They have all virtual tours now.
These are the greatest times.
Yeah, they don't have topo tables anymore. I don't know if anyone uses them, but
I don't even know what that is.
It's a table with a big glass, and it has like a model of what the community is going to look like.
Okay, yeah.
So it's like a little model, but then they went to virtual, models, and everybody's got a big screen TV. We didn't have that. We were in a double wide trailer down in Guana. No cell service. I mean, it was like with a gate station for food.
And the thermal fax machine, I bet, too.
I think we did have a fax machine. I think we did. But anyway, so just to backtrack on 2 things. Number one, Paul being my biggest cheerleader. I did work hard down there, and I became one of their top producers, if not their top producer. Paul Fletcher always sent me handwritten notes. Like, I'm so proud of you. If he'd see my name in the paper, he'd cut the clipping and send me a note and say, I'm so proud of you. I knew you could do it. And that meant the world to me. Always wanted to make him proud. But back to Ocean Grand. Oh, God, I just forgot my point. We were talking about...
Well, go think about that for a second. But if I can make a statement. Someone said, there's that phrase out there, money doesn't make you happy. And I think Paul gave you more than money.
Yeah.
He gave you he taught you how to fish, basically, or actually led you to the pond where there was a lot of fish.
He did. And I understood.
And that was his way of giving, and that makes him, the fact that you took that and you've gone well beyond what he probably even originally thought you would do. I mean, there's nothing more rewarding. I mean, you talk about value. Yeah. And then so to take that card, which and handwrite it as busy as I'm sure he is. Yeah. Is an added touch to it. But I mean, you actually return the impact by taking the lead he gave you or the opportunity he pointed you to and went
I
off
was
of it.
very thankful because coming into it, again, I had no idea. I'd moved from Chicago, big city. I wasn't used to that small town vibe. So when I realized I'd been given such an amazing opportunity, I was not going to mess it up. So I definitely strive to be the best salesperson I could. I paid attention to every meeting. I followed all my notes. I called people. I did my due diligence. I sent handwritten emails were still premature. Not premature. They were still early, but we did email. Yeah. We did. Yeah. But we sent handwritten notes to people, walk-ins. I always came in on my day off, which was huge. A lot of agents would get tired and they just didn't want to come back in. There were 3 of us on site. I came in, I dropped everything and went in.
If you had somebody that you had been working with said, I need to come in today.
Yep. And that's the only day they could come in or the only day they could come back. I was there.
Right.
Even though, I mean, it was 30-minute drive through Guana, no service. You do what you want to do. But I also, it made me feel good. But, I know what my point was to other agents too, is I learned to keep my mouth shut. And I'll tell you an example why. So talking about northern buyers, we had, people who were coming from Atlanta or New York, or upstate New York, New Jersey, all these places where their homes were like 100 years old, right? At the time, the trend was or not white cabinets. We couldn't sell anything with white cabinets. It was all maple. That's when maple and cherry were first starting to cycle back.
Because the northerners coming down wanting the darker wood.
Oh, well, no, they had it all. So locally, it was the maple. And we had this one spec that was built, had black granite and white cabinets. We could not sell it. So I'm doing my tour and I'm talking to the people. And I was like, oh, well, we do have this one.
I know someone who likes white and black, though, don't we, Daniel? Oh, she probably buy that.
Yeah, but we've cycled back. This is 21 years ago. But so I opened my mouth in the sales center and I was like, well, why hasn't that one sold? I'm like, oh, it has white cabinets and nobody wants white cabinets. They're like, we do. I mean, we've had dark, cabinets for our entire life. And I'm like, really? Great. Let's go see it. Yeah. And I thought that day, I am never going to put my foot in my mouth again. I'm like, what's important to you? Yeah. And I started asking that because I also knew, and I carried this with me to WCI too with oceanfront, because when you're building a tower and there's nothing to look at, I had to understand what was important. Like, what's view to you? View is very subjective. And I use that to this day. I call them my hot buttons. Mm-hmm. And to this very day, when I'm talking to someone, I'm like, and they're like, oh, I want a view. I'm like, well, what does view mean to you? Because some people want, preserved views. Some people want, golf course view. Some people who want a golf course view, they don't want to be on a cart path, or they don't want to be near the tee boxes, but they want a golf view. Other people want lake view. Other people are like, I don't want to live anywhere near alligator, snake infested lake,
Right.
It's very subjective.
Because of your experiences. Mm-hmm. And like you said, view is not the view to everyone. And that is because a lot of these people have grown up in neighborhoods where literally they looked out the back window and whatever space there was between them and the house behind them, which the back of houses generally aren't decorated.
That's right.
And look, don't look good. Yeah. But that's the view they've been looking at for their entire life. So when you go and show them, oh well, here's a preserve and you've got a little bit of yard, and then the preserve that might be like there's no house.
I know. It's just so, and it's crazy what different people want. And if you don't ask the question, you don't understand. And with Jacksonville being, the largest city square footage in the U.S., you have to find out. I always ask out-of-towners, what do you
square
like?
Miles, but
sorry, I'm thinking about
probably footage too.
I'm thinking about home square footage. You're right, square miles. Thank you. But it's you're working with people, and I say, what do you like to do in your spare time? Because if you're not a beach person, there's no need to pay the beach premium, right?
Right.
If you're a golfer, most golfers want to live near a golf course community. If you don't golf at all, you could care less. So same, why pay the premium? Mm-hmm. If you love to shop, you might want to be close. I mean, you just don't know. I ask people, what do you like to do in your spare time? Where do you work? What type of commute do you want? Because everybody's
that's usually big.
A different commute. What's a commute to us? I live at the beach, so I say I don't want to go over the ditch. Well, there are people who ride a train for 2 hours to get to work.
Yes.
Or an hour.
Yes.
So, or, are used to commuting in a car 45 minutes, 30 minutes is nothing to them. Mm-hmm. So if you don't ask the questions, you don't know. And then once you have an idea of what their hot buttons are, I can almost pinpoint, whether it's a neighborhood or a certain area, I can almost pinpoint where to look.
Now, obviously the last year, has been this anomaly. I don't, in your 21-year career, yes, but for the previous 20, you have to go through this sales process. Mm-hmm. And, the importance of your success, and, here, one of the top agents at RE/MAX in the country, I'm sure you rank there too in the top 1%. If you're top in Florida. Yeah. And, to go through that sales process and sit them down and answer because we do have so many lifestyles. Mm-hmm. I was on my CDD board for 11 years, so I have a seminar I teach on CDDs, the community development districts. Mm-hmm. And I explain to the agents, because a lot of them have a negative feeling about it, because it is a fee. It does affect the overall cost of things, but it's a lifestyle. Yeah, it is. And one of the great things here in Florida, unlike most places in the country, I can't say we're the only place like this, but we have so many different lifestyles. Do you want to be on the golf course? Do you want to be on the water? Do you want to preserve? Do you
Right. Are you a boater, fisher, want privacy? Do you want your, RV in your yard? Or right. There's a huge difference in the state of Florida, in my opinion, of gated versus non-gated, HOA, non-HOA.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, for instance, when I met my second husband, he would have never bought in a community with an HOA. That was like his thing. Well, I was the opposite. I wanted an HOA because I didn't want someone's trailer or, fifth car or boat. It's, even though
especially
we're
when you're
boaters,
living in such close proximity.
Yeah.
It's one thing if everyone's got space and there's trees and everything else, and you they could be over there and you don't really know what they're doing. But when you're living in some of these houses are only a few feet apart, and they're working on their car, they got their boat in there, and it just doesn't look good.
Yeah. And it's funny. So just, back with WCI building towers, we had, I call them towers here. They're towers are 12 stories, but again, they took 2 years to build, and we would have to pre-sell them. So going back to the hot buttons, I just still believe that is what trained me to do a better job in general real estate is, okay, what's your time frame? What type of, floor plan do you like? What view do you want? Because again, when you get on the ocean, when you get above certain levels, you don't see sand and surf. You don't see ocean. You walk in and you see the horizon. Right. So like when they would say, what do you mean? I'm like, well, when you sit down, do you want to see horizon or do you want to see water? And so, I could literally tell someone where to go in a tower. What is, they're not going to have anything for 2 years. And these are million plus places.
You've got to keep them engaged for 2 years.
Yeah.
Some of these guys were working with a major builder here. Yeah. It has been a year and a half, on some of these situations, and you got to keep them engaged.
Yeah.
And the amount of money they're willing to spend there and so forth, that you got to keep. So kind of actually brings up an interesting questions. You make the sale. Now they got to wait 12, 18, 24 months before they might hopefully be able to move into their unit. How do you keep them somewhat excited? Did you do certain things to kind of just
always stay in touch? I think depending on what you're building, there's different levels of engagement. But they had their design meetings, they always wanted to bring friends back. And to me, some agents didn't want to take that time to go back to the models because, again, we were in a sales center and we had to drive to the towers. And
right.
And I know that's similar in a big community here. You have a model row, and then you have that was important to me to take that time, take myself off the sales floor, knowing that I might miss a rotation to take them to show their friend or their family that was in town. So we always did that. They want to show people what they're buying.
How many of those led into other sales though for you?
I was their top producer by far. I would sell 25, 50 million a year.
I think I don't want to use the word average, but I think a lot of agents would have said, oh, I'm not going to give up my floor time to go take care of your friend who is probably not going to buy in here. You just want to show them and brag about what you just invested in, and not realize, as we do today, right now, how many times are people moving into the neighborhoods now, and their friends are moving in from Chicago and Ohio, whatever, to also live in the same neighborhood.
Well, that's a really, really good point. So most agents lived for their floor rotation. I was probably 85, 90% appointment only. So I didn't take, and they would take us off the floor for a full hour before our appointment time. So if I had a 10 o'clock and a 1 o'clock or whatever, they would take us off the floor by 9 so that we were not
couldn't
able.
Caught up because you had an appointment.
It took time to walk them through the models. It took time. These were multi-million-dollar places at the time. And so it wasn't just a hour showing. So I would lose rotations, but I worked 85, 90% repeat referral business. So,
which to me, you kind of shed a lot of tire kickers. Not saying that some of those people walking in off the street weren't buyers, but when the meat, bread, and butter slowly became because you were willing to spend the time. And I think one of the words that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, relationship. We talk about the loan officer and the realtor relationship and the title company and those relationships, but you were building strong relationships with every one of your buyers.
Well, you have to, because it's, real estate is typically people's largest asset. It's personal. It's your home. It's where you're going to live. It's where you're going to make your memories, where your kids are, going to be raised or come back home to, depending on what stage of life you're in. So it's important that you take that time to spend with them, whether it's during the sales process or all the way through. It's contract to close. You don't get them under contract, churn and burn, and leave them. And, it's important, but
what would you say to that fairly, even just a young realtor right now who, doesn't even a lot of, I've had many of great agents on there. They're young and they don't even have their own families yet. To slow down for a moment and spend an extra couple of minutes with each and every one of those clients.
I 100% agree. I would say first and foremost, slow down, listen, don't talk, let them talk, even though I talk a lot. I actually am a good listener too, but treat them all the same. Because I don't know that they do this anymore on site, but we had price points, because the front desk admin was trying to help determine which community within the community or which agent was on rotation. And we had a plethora of price ranges from 4 to 600, 6 to 8 million plus, 2 million plus. And some of my colleagues would take under 600. We didn't have anything under 600 at the time. And they would look at the card and walk out like, hi, we don't have anything, sorry. And I never did that. I literally took every opportunity I called it, fine tuning my skills. Like I gave every single person the exact same presentation and treated them the same. And that same person who marked under 600, well, they might have been buying a second or third home. I can't tell you how many people that checked under my price point.
And spent 800 or 900 or a million.
1.5.
Yeah.
All the time. I mean, it was a second, third home, or people don't always want you sizing them up.
Right.
So even if you're not in that kind of a community, that level, no one wants to be sized up. So whether it's 200, 300, 500, 600, a million, I don't care what the price point is. It really doesn't matter. Treat everybody the same and treat every opportunity as if they're not right for you, maybe they're going to refer their friend or their cousin. You don't know who somebody knows. Treat them all the same.
One of the things I've learned, and I'll be 52 here in a couple months, and I will tell to young people, and I think you're saying it right now. You're hearing these things over and over again. People are telling you, surround yourself, build relationships, take a little more time in your presentation to strengthen those things. And here you just basically told them something I guarantee heard in their original real estate class or any sales. Do not do that. Person oftentimes, in the mortgage, they're asking me the interest rate because they don't know what else to ask. Right. When really, for the most part, they just want to know what's going to cost them each month.
That's right.
This is what they want. How much is it going to cost me each month? Because I know how much I make. The interest rate is irrelevant. Right. And in your case, the price point of a home, they're coming in, and in their mind, they have $600,000. Who knows? We can try to dig and find out why that number is in their head. But you took a little bit of time and found out they could actually afford a $1.5 million house. And now that because I was such a good salesman, they're buying a $1.5 million house.
They'll go sell something else and because they like that. But if I would have walked out and said, oh, we don't have anything for under 6, sorry.
Yeah.
Or, another big thing, I'm embarrassed to admit this, one of my colleagues would judge people's cars they would drive in by. And guess what? We're in Florida. People fly in. They get a rental car. They get a rental car. It doesn't matter. And you know what? It does not matter. New agents, I don't care if you're on site, you're in general, give everybody the same chances, give everybody the same presentation, and really dig deep. To me, if you're just surface scratching and you're just trying to, get the sale real quick, you're never going to get to the bottom of what that person really wants. And a lot of times, maybe someone comes in and they say, okay, I really want a pool. Well, why is the pool important to you? Find out why. And then, well, because I've never had one before. It might not be because I'm a swim instructor. If you've never had one before, okay, we might be able to find you something. Okay, so is it room for a pool an option, or do you have to have a pool? Because some people do have must-haves. Yeah. And they really are must-haves. Other people will say they have a must-have and you can work around it. Right. But you're never going to find out if you don't dig deeper.
They might say they want a pool, and then when you say, okay, well, you realize that's going to cost you X amount of dollars in maintenance every month, they're like, I'll go to the community pool.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And it's just an interesting process, and it's fabulous. It's very rewarding. I get a lot of personal satisfaction from helping people and find something.
So I guarantee one tip, would you agree? I can just only assume one of your great paths or reasons why you've been successful in your 21 years and you're still pushing and growing is because you're taking the time, you're listening, and you're actually, presenting with an intelligent based on what they've told you. You've dug a little deeper to clarify, and you're not wasting their time.
No.
Because I had Lisa Barton on here the other day, and
Lisa.
she said yes, and the one thing she said with these, especially with these more affluent buyers buying in the luxury price point, is time.
Yeah.
And if you aren't pre-screening them and knowing, so you're not running all over Northeast Florida looking at homes or up and down the beach that they aren't even really interested in, because you took an extra 15, 20 minutes, maybe an hour of having a conversation in a comfortable setting.
That's right.
And they're not stressed driving through traffic because they want to look at 12 homes. You showed them 3 homes, and because you listened and you put them on it.
Well, and also listening, I had a client, without getting to different areas, they were moving from a city that had benefited from huge gains over the years. Old industrial parts of the city that were turned into multi-million-dollar properties, 5 years later. And that was their driving force. They were a young family, had young kids, and they couldn't let go of what they had happen, where they didn't buy during that time. They just knew it happened, so they wanted to bring that here. So we were looking in different parts of town, and I'm thinking, oh, why are you so set on this part? Why are you so set? And it was for the end game. They wanted to make that whatever, a couple $100,000 turn into $2 million in 3 to 5 years. I'm like, we're a different city. And then they started asking questions about why are there security cameras everywhere. I'm like, well, because there are, and I have to be careful. I'm licensed, right?
Yeah.
And so then I started digging deeper. Why are you so set on this? Why? Because the wife was fighting it tooth and nail, and the husband's like, no. And kept saying, we can do what was done in X. I don't want to mention any city names, but this is going to be the next. And I'm sitting here thinking, I've lived in Jacksonville for over 20 something years, actually 2 years before I moved. So I'm almost 25 now. And I said, I don't see that happening here. This is a very different dynamic. This is a beach town too. It's a naval town. It's a hospital, healthcare, insurance. It's not the same kind of environment and urban setting you came from. I think we should redirect here. And they are so thrilled. They're so thrilled now, because where they wanted to go was just to make that investment turn into something that it most likely was never going to turn into.
Right.
And then their quality of life wouldn't have been the same.
I'm sure you run into this all the time, and especially some of these very young buyers, especially right now, they're looking for that. Hey, I want to do a renovation loan. I'm going to buy this house. All right, let me stop you right now. I'm going to tell you right now, there's enough cash though in Northeast Florida that house has potential to be renovated without issues and resold, and someone's going to make $30,000 off of it. It would already be sold. I know, and I'm brutally honest, and I'm always thankful for that. I came from a very strong, solid family. I've talked myself out of listings because, especially in the past 2 years, when you are meeting with somebody and they have this fabulous house, and you kind of know what they paid for it, you kind of pretty much know what their mortgage is based, loosely based. And I'm talking to them. I'm like, why do you want to sell? They're like, well, we'll sell out. We'll bank this money. We'll go rent. And I'm like, well, what are you going to rent? Well, we haven't looked yet. And I don't make money unless I sell, right? And some of these are really, I live in Ponte Vedra Beach. I sell everywhere, but I'm very centrally located there. And, I'm like, look, I would love to have your $2 million listing. I'll sell it all day long. I'll get multiple offers. You have 2 big dogs. Why don't you go find a rental first that allows you to bring your 2 big dogs? Then you tell me, once you've found a rental, how much you're paying for
it.
And the house is the size you want, in the location you want, because they want all that too.
Okay. So, because I this one particular couple, I was like, go look. I said, I guarantee you're going to pay more in rent than you're paying now. Like, well, we'll just ride the wave. And I'm like, no. This isn't a wave. This is different from 2007, 2008. This is different. And, everybody's not doing interest-only loans. They're not buying homes they can't afford. They're not putting zero down. They're not having balloon, payments in 3 to 5 years they can't afford. And I was like, you go rent that place. All of my investors that have rental properties, they're selling them. They're all selling them. They're cashing out. So you might be hopping from rental to rental with your 2 big dogs, which is going to be hard. And you're going to pay more than you're paying for your house. Right. You're not going to be able to afford to buy this lifestyle back.
Right.
So, of course, I'm shooting myself in the foot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they still thank me. That was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Every time I see
Well,
them,
because when they went and
thank
did what
me.
you said, go look, what's going to cost you rent?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but you live in a $2 million house now, and what kind of house are you going to rent?
Yeah.
It's 2 million houses. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure we can find a $2 million house that's up for rent, but that payment is a lot more than the mortgage, and half of them are on the beach, and they Airbnb them for for tens of thousands of dollars a week, and
and it's really any price point. I mean, a lot of times people, because it is awfully attractive to think about, everybody's house is worth a lot of money right now.
I think they get lost in the. I was watching Grant Cardone, a little clip on him, and he was talking about, I rent my house. No, he rents it from himself.
Yeah.
His company owns the house, and he rents it from himself. That's what he does. It's not that he doesn't own it. He owns it. He just rents it from himself. He puts the house in his company's name for what, tax, for whatever, that is. It's not, he is not legitimately renting from someone else.
Yeah. He's like, I'm not renting from
He's not paying someone else's mortgage.
He adjusts his own rent.
Yes.
But I don't want to see anybody in a situation where they're trying to capitalize on something now that's going to hurt them down the road.
Yeah.
And frankly, it happens all the time. I mean,
my wife and I, we live in St. John's Golf. We have a larger home, and if we went to try to buy in Nocatee or go out to the beach, we'd have to spend in the millions to do it.
Yeah. So
from the house sector, part of it inside the walls, we're not really going to improve. Now, if I wanted to be closer to the beach, or that was an atmosphere thing, or would be some reason to move, but we're like, if we're going to the top elementary school for the kids, so why are we, rushing? Because we're really going to step down. We have to buy a smaller home, really.
And you feel bad for buyers right now. I mean, and I tell sellers, like, all right, you sell high, you're going to buy high too.
Mm-hmm.
So, it happens almost daily. And so whether you talk yourself out of it, at least I can sleep at night.
Yes.
I can sleep very soundly at night.
All right, we're quickly going through these. So we're already 45 minutes into this.
Oh, sorry.
But it's great. No, this is some. But I'm gonna try to be a little more fine tuned to go through some of the points we definitely want to make. What are you doing to stay on top? Whether it's personal development, because you're dealing with a lot of affluent clients. I asked Lisa this the other day. Mm-hmm. What do you do personally to stay out in front?
As far
mentally, physically,
Well, I think you just have to, have a regimen. I have 2 kids and a husband and a dog, crazy dog. Mm-hmm. So, I kind of have my schedule and I stick to it. Now it's going to change and fluctuate, but mentally you've got to, get good sleep at night, exercise when you can, relax and enjoy downtime, because it's been a zoo the past 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. It's really been tough, and you just have to carve out that time.
Do you read, or are you podcast listener, or do you just, what do you...
Not really.
Stay informed?
I spend a lot of time with my kids. As far as staying informed with real estate, of course, you're online every day. You're looking at what's coming, what's out there, what's selling, what's going. You read trade publications. But as far as podcasts, I don't really have a lot of time. I'm on my phone and my computer so much during the day.
Does anybody ever give you a new idea?
When was the last time? Yeah, okay. I got a new idea actually from an offer. Okay. And it's funny is, usually when we're listing something, we're getting multiple offers. And, it's kind of like, I've been there, done that, seen that. I had one recently I hadn't seen. I was like, I like that. They offered to not only buy, cash, but to sellers, just take whatever you want. We'll get rid of the rest. Take whatever you want out of the house, and we will literally put a dumpster and either sell.
If it's not fastened to the walls,
that's right,
on the floor.
Take it and leave.
You don't care if they take the appliances.
They didn't care. They're like, take whatever you want, leave the rest. We'll clear out the house.
You think that helped them when they get...
Well, in this case, it did. The mother it was 2 kids. The mother had passed last year. Mm-hmm. They moved their father, who had dementia, up to a nursing home near them up north. And so for them, it was saving them the hassle of going through their parents' entire home. So it's like, come take whatever books you want, whatever, furniture, memorabilia, whatever you want out of the house, and whatever you don't want or need, or your dad can't use, you guys can't use, leave it. We're going to remodel anyway. And I thought, that took a lot. Yeah, that was an interesting idea. That's not going to be everyone's, choice of how to write an offer, but I kind of liked it. It was different. So, but to stay on top of stuff, again, just trade publications. I interface a lot with my colleagues. Between Lisa, there's a lot of us that we call and we talk on a regular basis. And having that open communication.
Well, that's one of the things I have on my list, because
Yeah.
this is there's underlying themes in every one of these great agents like yourself that I'm hearing. Surrounding yourself by other successful people. Lisa mentioned, and there's other, what I found, especially the women, I don't see the guys doing it as much, but you guys go out to lunch. I see you guys posting it on Facebook or whatever, and all of you are working with different brokerages. But I'm sitting. Sometimes I see a picture and there'll be 4 or 5 agents there, and some 3 or 4 of them I've already had on the show because they're great agents, and I'm like, wow, look at the success sitting at that table.
That's right. And
you guys do get together and exchange.
We definitely do, and we talk, like, a lot of us on a regular basis, like, you know. And to me, it goes back to being honest again. I'm the type of agent where I'll call other agents and, you know, say, okay, I've got something coming. I'm kind of struggling with pricing it. I think everyone, if they're being honest, struggles a little bit with listing prices this day. I mean, it's just like kind of a crapshoot. You know, you know where you should be, but then you're like, I don't want to leave any money on the table.
You don't want to be too high, but you know you're going to get some offers above and beyond the asking right now.
And it's difficult. So a lot of us will. I mean, top producing agents, like, what do you think? And then next thing you know, a day later, they're calling me, hey, do you think you would mind going on this listing agreement with me? I know that you sold the house, you know, 2 doors down twice, and you know the ins and outs. I've never been in the house. Can you go with me? I mean, to have another top producing agent call me and ask me to go on a listing appointment with her.
Right.
And I'm like, absolutely happy to help. Or, you know, I'm calling up.
Well, she probably hopes that you're going to bring in a top dollar client too.
Yeah.
Buyer.
You know,
but hey, that's the way it works, right? I mean, that's the
other.
relationships you've made there.
And
so that's one of the other things. So relationships.
Yes.
Not only we talked about detail about building relationships with every one of your buyers or sellers, you know, because they're good. You know, like I always talk, you never know what that rock will turn. You may overturn a rock and you got 5 more deals because those people know a lot of people, loved your service, and they're telling everybody you got to go with Jennifer.
That's right.
So, but the relationships with your other agents, they are not competition, is what I'm finding. Is the attitude a lot of top producers is they don't see the other agents as competition.
No, we're friends. I mean, before I came here, I mean, I have several top agents that are like very good friends. Like, we do holidays together. We boat together. We have our families together.
Right.
And this one said, all right, what do you have coming? I'm like, well, I've got this, and this coming. She's like, great. She's like, well, I have 2. Let me tell you about that. I'm like, I have buyers for both. And before I left to come here, I'm like emailing, you know, my clients, like, hey, I've got this one coming. It's not me, it's my friend. She's listing it. Do you want to try to get in first? And we do. We definitely bounce ideas off each other. We bounce list price, you know.
The offers in the last 2 years, being creative in the offer, like you just mentioned what you learned. I mean, that's been a very, in the last 12, 18 months.
Well, it is. And especially if something's under contract, like if I'm pricing something and another agent has something under contract, I'm kind of like, wonder how that turned out. I will call that agent and say, hey, you know, not asking your price, of course, but, you know, did you get a good offer? And, you know, a lot of times we're like, yes, we did. I'm like, okay, over asking, yes. Like, how many offers did you have? Like, girl had 8. You know, why don't you call, you know, these agents? They're the ones that had the other offers. They lost. They were disappointed. And so we do that. I mean, and then sometimes we have egg on our face because we will comp something. Elizabeth Hudgens and I did that twice last year. I priced something off of one of hers, and the day mine went live, hers fell out. And I was texting her, like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, girl, I priced mine based off yours. She's like, I know, and I'm really sorry. But then 2 weeks later, she priced one of hers off mine, and she was calling me. She's like, are you going to close? Please tell me you're closing. I'm asking her about it. I'm like, yes, I am. And she's like, thank you. Like, so, I mean, sometimes we have to, like, you know, have that relationship because it's hard. It's hard.
You talked about earlier when you initially got started, you spend a lot the term education is very broad. You know, we're not talking about formal education of going to a classroom, but there are, you know, going to NEFAR. You know, you said you went to the meetings. Yes. How important you think that was in making you a top producer when you were selling those condos out there, that you were in some of those meetings and just picked up on these little nuggets that a lot of people don't think are important. That's why they don't go to the meeting. But all of a sudden you're sharing that with a buyer. And for some reason, they think it's important because, I don't know what kind of range they're putting in
acoustical caulking. Acoustical caulking.
Go there.
Did not even know there was such a thing. But I think it's huge. Very good point, Tracy. And especially for the on-site agents or general agents selling new product, know your developer product. Because people like to buy name brands. Like, and if you're constructing something and yours costs more than the competition down the road, you have to understand why.
Yeah.
Like, because if you can't explain it as a site agent, or you can't explain to your buyer, then you can't justify why it's that much more. But I always say not all square footages are created equally. They are not. Like, so I don't use price per square foot all the time.
When you walk into the Porsche dealer, the Range Rover dealer, Mercedes Benz, you're likely to get a different salesperson than if you're walking on the Kia lot or the lower end Chevy lot, right? That they weren't allowed to even get out there and show you a car until they reached an education level, probably had to pass a bunch of tests.
Yeah.
And it's, to go in there and, obviously we were working a large builder here, to go in and learn those little things. Because one, you may have to overcome objections. They might not always be a positive thing.
Oh yeah, no.
And now you got to learn how to overcome. Yeah, you got to be prepared so they don't hit you on the side, and you're not prepared. So education in many different ways, wherever you can grab it, whether it's sitting in those meetings, whether it's at NEFAR, whatever it is, educate. When you think you have downtime, you don't. You need to be educating and expanding.
I mean, I read the Florida Realtor magazine that comes out. I actually love my Real Producers magazine. I great articles, great information. Sometimes lenders send you stuff. Sometimes title companies, if there's a change with the contract, or if there's a change with anything, you just have those resources you can go to. I call the owner of a title company all the time, like, hey, I haven't heard about this. Like, can you tell me what this is about? Or, hey, maybe come to our meeting and explain it to our agents. Like, with insurance changing constantly, gosh, all the home warranties were drastically changing during COVID.
Right.
With them not able to get parts and pieces, and more and more home warranties were being exercised because there were, 4 or 5 people home. Everybody's working from home and lockdown. People's toilets were breaking more. Their appliances were breaking more. Everything was breaking more.
Right.
It was getting used more.
Right.
So, I think education's huge. And if you can attend to those design meetings, construction meetings, the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more successful you're going to be.
So there's 4 things I have listed that are common. We've talked about 3. The one that we actually haven't talked about yet, but I think it's underlying, consistency. Whatever you do, marketing, whatever, what would you say in your 21 years that you are consistent with and has proven, because you've consistently done it, have bared fruit on them?
I've always treated everybody the same. I've always given everybody the same time. I've always done follow-up, whether it's phone calls, letters, emails, and
little thank you cards.
Thank you. Yes. Or, even if someone's, closed a while ago, it's calling, hey, how do you love your new home? Or, oh, how's this working for you? I mean, just be yourself, be true, follow up, just whatever you can do to be consistent. I pretty much do the same stuff.
Because what I read out of the article with the Real Producers was you started that early.
I did.
That wasn't something you reached a certain level. Because, I should start following up with my past clients. You were doing it right from the get-go. And it's just rolled you for 21 years.
Yeah. It's like, how your kids like in their school? I know it's a hard transition, age for your daughter. How's it going? And, they're probably not buying another house right now. And I don't do it for you to buy a house for me down the road. I do it because I care. So I think that's a huge thing.
Well, you got to be, I think that the other thing, you have to be genuine.
Yeah.
Genuine.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in this business or any sales business and you want to build relationships, you really want to hear someone's story. And like you asked me before the thing, we were talking about the podcast in general. I said, you know what, I've gotten hooked on it because you know what, the stories I'm hearing from everyone are just so amazing. I just I literally could get paid to listen to everyone's story. I would do it 24/7 because it's so amazing the path that you've taken and reach into the success. So we're right at an hour here. So I'm gonna wrap up because we definitely could probably go 2 hours. Yeah. As I tell everyone, I always want to leave the door open. I'm gonna bring you back on at some other time. We can continue to talk about, because there's so many nuggets that, whether it's real estate or any other sort of business, that the path you've taken, the things that you've done, you've said some those cornerstone things. And again, we hear a lot in these personal development books. Are you doing them? That's the question. And here's someone that's doing them and is bearing fruit because you've stayed consistent. 2-minute warning questions. Is it more important who you know or what you know?
I think both equally. So I think, who you know sometimes can open a door but it's what you know that gets you through the door. And, sometimes people are given opportunities, but they don't take advantage of them, or they don't try their hardest to strive to the highest achievable level. So I think it's probably
Well, I think, your story with
Paul Fletcher,
was exactly that. I mean, one, you went and took a job that was more or less below your skill level, more or less, and you were just strolling through and having a good time with it to see what else happened. And something else happened, and you didn't even expect it to happen.
Nothing.
He opened the door, you stepped through it, you immediately saw the opportunity.
Yeah.
So what went into high gear.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
So.
What's on your travel bucket list?
Oh gosh, I would love to just travel again since COVID locked down. But we have my youngest son just turned 6, and my oldest just turned 15. So we're kind of waiting till they get a little bit older to do. I would love to go to Egypt. I'd love to go to England. I'd love to do some other islands I haven't been to before.
Yeah.
I actually really love to do a lot of the United States I haven't seen, like rent an RV.
Yeah.
And there's parts like the Midwest. And,
all right.
Yeah.
I've mentioned this once before. I'm really debating to really get with a couple of people and actually buy a nice one, because I want to do the same thing. My kids are my daughter will be 9 and my son's 12, 9 next month. And we need to go and just go. And it's so many amazing places. I mean, so many amazing places around the world. Yeah. But we could literally just get up. We don't have to get our passports and things like that and just go, because there are so many.
Beautiful. I'd love to see the Grand Tetons, the big redwoods. I mean, there's so many places I haven't been in our own country.
Have you ever watched that show Mystery in the Museum?
No.
The guy goes around the country and finds all these little museums in these smallest towns in the country, and there's something in that museum that has a story behind it. And that's what we all miss, because we don't stop in those little small towns and walk in those little museums. There's the story behind everyone, just like there's a story behind every great real estate agent. Oh, you like how I brought that around?
That was pretty good. That's pretty good.
All right, finalize this. I'm a loan officer. I do loans. I still write them. Somebody asked me that the other day. I wish I did podcast all day and got paid for it, but I don't get paid for the podcast. I'm sure, with your affluent clients, you have lenders that obviously you result. Yeah. What is the most important part of your as an agent to the loan officer? What is the most important thing you think in that relationship?
Oh gosh, communication for sure, and customer service. Like, I'm handing over my client who I work so carefully with. Handle them with kid gloves. You treat them the way I would treat them, but please follow up. Don't drop the ball. Let's open communication all the way through to the end of closing, so that it's a smooth process.
When you said that, it triggered an idea, because it's something I'm doing here, and that's communication has been number one on that question, and rightly so. The other things the agents have to realize: some of the loan officers are getting as successful as they are. And they're writing a lot of loans that they have to bring in other people, like you bring in transaction coordinators and so forth. And it's important that they are taught that communication, because I imagine sometimes you call in, but you probably have, some loan officers, which I'm sure are great producers because they're hanging out with you, and you call their assistant because that assistant's going to have the answer. Right. That assistant's actually in the loan every day. Yes. The loan officer's out doing podcasts and coffees, right?
Hey, as long as we get the answers.
As long as you get the answer, it doesn't. That's the point. It doesn't matter if it's a loan officer or not.
No, happy
Jennifer,
to work with them.
I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It's been really fun.
People don't want to listen to podcasts for 2 hours. Hours good, but we'll definitely have you back on, because I think as I make a swing around in my second year, we start to really dig in, because today was a little more of your personal story about nuts and bolts, how to be a great real estate agent. That's and keep digging into that.
Happy to help. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
It's an honor. Thank you.